Welcome to Fear-Free Childbirth Podcast with Alexia Leachman, the weekly 9-month podcast to help parents-to-be look forward to their fear-free childbirth. Alexia is a pregnancy and head trash clearance coach and the author of Fear-Free Childbirth, How to Have a Stress-Free Pregnancy and a Positive, Pain-Free Birth. As a mum who's had 2 fear-free and pain-free births, Alexia wants to share with you how she overcame her pregnancy and childbirth fears so that you can look forward to having a fear-free birth too. Over the 9-month life of this podcast, Alexia will be sharing some real-life stories from mums and dads, insights into the latest childbirth research, inspiring tales from birth professionals, and some tips and techniques for clearing your fears and stresses. If you would like to receive a free chapter from her book, then head over to fearfreechildbirth.com, where you can also sign up for her email series, How to Have a Stress-Free Pregnancy. But now, it's time for the show.
Hello and welcome back to the Fear-Free Childbirth Podcast. This is me, your host, Alexia Leachman, and thank you so much for joining me today. Now, today I want to talk about the idea of a fear-free childbirth. And what is that all about, and why do we want a fear-free childbirth? Surely, there's some women I've heard say, well, you just got to go through it, you just got to suck it up and see, and it's just part of being a woman and all that kind of stuff. And well, yes, if that's fine, if that's what you want your birth experience to be. But actually, it doesn't have to be that way. There are other alternatives. And if you want, you can have a fear-free childbirth. And that will mean that you can have an amazing experience on the day and embrace it with open arms. So for me, I just want to firstly talk about why might you opt for having a fear-free childbirth. And when I say opt, about making it sound like there's something you can choose. And yes, it is something you can choose. You might be sitting here listening to this going, yes, but I'm utterly terrified. How can I choose a fear-free childbirth? Well, that's what I want to help you with, because it is possible to get rid of these fears. It is possible to clear these fears and just make them dissolve and go away. And that's what I want to help you to do. But really, why would you want to have a fear-free birth? Well, first of all, just the sheer experience of it. Just life is too short to be filled with negative, horrible experiences. So let's just use life to have lots of positive experiences, and giving birth to a new little human being is one of life's most beautiful experiences, and it can be incredibly beautiful and magical, especially if there is no fear and you have an easy pregnancy and an easy birth, which means there's much reduced likelihood of complications happening on the day. And so why not choose to have that experience in your life that you can refer back to, you can think back with a smile on your face, that both you and your partner can remember fondly. This is something worth working for. This is something certainly that I believed was worth working for, and this is something that I wanted in my life. And so I worked hard to have a fear-free birth. And it does come with work, believe me. It's not something that's it's not a walk in the park. So if you want it, you can have it, but you've got to want it. So, that's the first reason, really, the idea that you can just have this amazing experience that's just so magical. But actually, there's more to it than this. And this is quite a compelling reason, actually, the next one. And that is that by having a fear-free childbirth, you're more likely to have a pain-free childbirth, because the level of fear that you experience around childbirth has got a direct impact on the level of pain that you will experience in childbirth. I'm going to talk a lot more about this in another episode, so I'm not going to dive into that now. But just know that this is backed by science. This isn't woo-woo. It's not positive thinking stuff. It is real, and you can change your experience of pain. You can reduce your experience of pain purely by changing what's going on in your head. And this is even more relevant in childbirth because your fears have got a direct impact on how your body responds to those. And because the childbirth experience is such a physical experience as well as being a mental one, it really is quite acute. So the results that you can get in terms of the positive results you can get from really working on your fears can really have an amazing result in terms of what you will experience with your body. So for me, that's the reason I was doing this, is because I'm such a pain wuss that the idea of being in pain for hours and hours, or if not days, was just something I couldn't bear the thought of. So that was my motivating factor, I have to say. But also, the more I've been reading about this kind of stuff, is that, having a traumatic birth or a painful birth or anything that's remotely negative on that day can be a huge contributing factor to postnatal depression. So even though we're not very clear, or at least the medical community aren't very clear on what causes postnatal depression, they are certainly very clear that there are some key factors that will contribute to you experiencing it. And one of those is a negative or a traumatic birth experience. So, for me, I think this is also very compelling, at least for the mums, is that you really do want to try and avoid having that, because that just makes mothering awful and difficult, and it's not good for the dad who's got to be within the family unit as well while you're going through that, but also not good for the child and other children that might be within the family as well. So you just don't, if you can avoid experiencing something like postnatal depression, and you can maybe take out an insurance, for want of a better word, beforehand by really managing your mental state and your mental well-being in the lead up to the birth, then I think that's really quite a compelling reason as well to want to opt for a fear-free birth. So that's really that's my perspective on why I think it's worth trying to do this. But now, thinking about fear-free childbirth, well, what kind of fears are we talking about here? And when I've given this a lot of thought, and I have done, and certainly I've had to because of wanting to, now choosing to write a book on the subject, so I've really sort of dived much deeper than maybe others have on this subject. But I've really come to having an opinion. There's probably two categories of fear that you are dealing with when it comes to childbirth. And the first one, I think, is the fear of the unknown. And actually, if I had to I'd prefer to call this fear arising from being misinformed, because a lot of the fear that women have around childbirth is really to do with their lack of knowledge and understanding of the childbirth process, as to what your body is doing, what changes it's going through, and what is happening in your body that is helping you to deliver the baby safely, easily and painlessly. The body is doing amazing things on the day to help to make that a painless experience, but unfortunately our fears get in the way of that. So once you understand what your body is capable of doing, it really does take away a lot of those fears very quickly, just when you just do a little bit of homework, you just read up about it, you just gain some knowledge and just improve your understanding. So the first category of fear, I definitely think, is this fear of the unknown. And I think if you spend some time reading about pregnancy, reading about childbirth, and understanding a little bit more about what your body's doing, then a lot of those fears will just simply slip away. And I think that's well worth doing, because then what you're left with, if you're still fearful of childbirth, having read all about childbirth and having really savvied up on what it's all about, what your body's doing, and all the really juicy stuff to know why you shouldn't really experience pain on the day. Hormones have got a big role to play here. So understanding how hormones work is really, really crucial to helping you to realise that this is possible. But if you have any fear left after really doing that, then this is the second category of fear that you're left with, and that's deep emotional fear. So when I was pregnant for the first time, I couldn't even bear to read the books on childbirth because it just completely freaked me out. There was just a sick feeling in my stomach, my body would tense, my legs would cross automatically. There was something else going on here that was a lot more than my rational brain could deal with. I could read up on childbirth as much as I wanted, but it wasn't going to change the fact that whenever I was presented with an idea of childbirth, with a picture of it, with an article in a newspaper, no matter where it came from, where that information came from, my body would just go into this fearful automatic shutdown response, and I was not in control of it. And so that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about deep emotional fear. These kind of fears are really ingrained deep within your subconscious. They have maybe been planted there in childhood, maybe your own birth experience has caused some of that. And so we really need to go deep to try and clear that stuff. We can't just positive think our way out of them. We can't read our way out of them by reading some, interesting stories or information about what birth is about. This is stuff that we need to change on an emotional level and in our subconscious. And so that is what I can help you with the techniques that I will be sharing with you during this podcast. And the tricky part with these fears really is identifying them, because you need to be able to identify them in order to clear them. And so I will be dedicating some episodes to helping you to identify some of these deeper emotional fears, because the problem with some of those fears is that they have got a really sneaky habit of just being able to sneak up on the day without you wanting them to, because maybe there's a trigger that's just been released within the environment that you're in that suddenly triggered your fear, and you have no control over that. And so it's really important to try and get rid of all potential fear triggers in advance, so that nothing can set you off on the day, which will get in the way of your body doing what your body can do best when it's left fear-free. So for me, that's how I think about the the fears that surround us in childbirth, and really what you can do to try and mitigate all that and approach your own childbirth experience from this fear-free perspective. So I'm talking a lot about clearing your fears, and you might be thinking, well, how on earth do you clear a fear that's so deep-rooted within our system? Well, that is what I really, really want to help you with. And the technique that I'll be using or advising that you use to help you to clear your fears is my head trash method for the 5 steps to clearing head trash. So if you don't know my work already, then my business, I'm a head trash coach, and you can go to headtrash.co.uk and see what I do there. But basically it's about clearing negative thoughts, feelings and emotions using a brilliantly powerful new technique. And this technique is called Reflective Repatterning, but I've managed to simplify it to a nice 5-step process that anybody can use without having been trained in it. And so this is the exact system that I use to clear my fears, and you can get hold of that right now on the fearfreechildbirth.com website and on the headtrash.co.uk website as well. You just have to hand over your email address and I'll send it to you straight away, and you can literally start clearing your fears today. And so that is what I'm going to be helping you to do. Using that technique is to clear your fears. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, the real tricky bit really is identifying your fears and trying to figure out what they are. And so that's what I want to help you to do over the course of this podcast, with some of the episodes coming up, is really helping you to unpick where your thoughts are when it comes to childbirth and what your fears really are. Now, some of you, I would imagine, can do this really easily. You can just sit there, take a quiet moment and think, right, what on earth, what's going on in my head when I think about childbirth? And just brainstorm, just write those down, right? Just get a bit of paper and just write everything that's really worrying you about your childbirth that's coming up. You know, what's going on in your pregnancy, the changes in your body, what you're worried about happening on the day. Anything that you might be worried about or scared about on any level, whether it's a tiny little niggle or a big, real major worry, concern that's taking up a lot of headspace, no matter what it is, write it down and create yourself a list. And then you just need to work through that list systematically to clear your fears one by one. And that is exactly what I did to start reducing the fears in my head. So that's as easy as it is, to be perfectly honest. There's a lot of other stuff I did as well to help to really solidify that and prepare for the birth that I wanted, because it's all very well clearing your fears, but I think it's also very important to put the good stuff in. You know, what do you want out your birth experience? What do you want to experience in your birth? And so being clear about working on the things that you want as well as the things that you don't want. It's very easy in life for us to go, I don't want this and I don't want that and I definitely don't want this. But it's not always easy to say, well, actually, this is what I want. This is what I want to do with my life. This is the kind of experience I want. And maybe we don't do that because we're not bold enough to think that we can actually achieve it. Maybe we think, I best not sort of decide what I do want, because what if I can't? And then I'm a failure. And then we have this whole thing about fear of failure going on. You know, so there's a whole other piece of head trash linked to that. But really, in terms of creating your ideal birth experience, there's 2 parts to it. There's clearing the fears and then identifying what it is that you do want as well in tandem. So I'll be sharing exactly how to go about doing that over the course of this podcast. But for today, I hope that what I've shared with you today on fears and really understanding what the 2 broad categories of fear are is beginning to help you to start unpicking what's going on in your head and starting to make sense of it, so that you can start maybe knocking some of those fears on the head and thinking about your upcoming birth in a positive, excited way. And that is what I want more than anything. Okay, until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for tuning in. You've just been listening to Alexia Leachman from the Fear-Free Childbirth podcast. If you enjoyed the show, she'd really love it if you left a review on iTunes or Stitcher, or shared it with a friend. And don't forget, to get a free chapter from her book, head over to fearfreechildbirth.com to get your copy, as well as finding other episodes in this podcast and more about how Alexia can help you with pregnancy and birth preparation coaching. Until next time.